E-commerce brand owners, we need to sit down and have a little chat about exactly how the Google Ads platform works. Because after speaking to tens of founders every single week under my Google Ads agency, I have come to realize that most founders actually have zero clue of how Google Ads truly works. And as a result, they're doing things such as spending a bunch of budgets on things that don't really matter. Now, before we actually get into the nitty-gritty, you want to understand how Google Ads works on a fundamental level. On a fundamental level, Google Ads is basically a search-based platform. You can think of it like a platform like Amazon. However, it's very different from Amazon, and I'm going to cover why very shortly. But essentially, it's a search platform where your user has to come to you. There's no way out there to force your ad in front of people like you would with Facebook ads or TikTok ads, or to just randomly show up when somebody's on a blog page or playing a video game. Because with the Google Ads platform, somebody actively has to go on Google and type in "buy certain keyword" to then find your product and go from there. Now, on a very foundational level, Google Ads is responsible for doing just two major things. Number one, it's responsible for cold traffic acquisition, or number two, it's responsible for retargeting. That's literally it. There's no other thing that Google on its own should be doing or could be doing to begin with. This means that a lot of your strategies, a lot of your approach when it comes to the Google Ads platform are directly buying intent. Although there are certain strategies where, for example, you could run an ad to a blog page, which is entirely about educating the user, but that's besides the point. That's not really buying intent based. So keeping that in mind, because Google is a search-based platform, there's a few things that Google wants your brand to get right in order to show up your products and your brand as a whole in front of the ideal keywords. Number one, you want to understand is Google optimizes for the user experience first, not your ROAS. I know even though Google gives you that special metric of setting that target ROAS or that target CPA, at the end of the day, it does not give a damn about the ROAS that your brand achieves, because all it cares about is its own users that use the platform to not only shop, but to search, to do other things. And although this might sound a bit selfish, because at the end of the day, you're the one that's actually paying Google money to operate via these ads, Google still needs to keep its user experience first in mind, because if there's no user, there's no money to be made for anybody essentially. But this also means that there are certain things you need to be doing right in order to get the Google Ads algorithm itself on your side. But generally speaking, Google relies a lot on historical data and things such as conversion tracking, landing page experience to even determine if you're doing things right. Now, historical data, of course, comes from running ads on Google, so that's besides the point. But second is things like your foundations. How strongly set up is your conversion tracking? How strongly set up is your product feed? What are you doing with the landing page experience? All these things ultimately impact how the user that's using Google to shop on your website feels about the platform as a whole. Because if the user feels scammed, or they feel like they're not getting the deal that they could be getting from Google or your brand in general, then ultimately they will also exit the Google platform itself and not shop with them or not try to do any further searches, which ultimately impacts Google itself very negatively. So you have to keep in mind that although Google is there for you to advertise your product, your brand needs to be working with Google's criteria and making Google money more than what you pay in terms of ad spend for it to even want to rank your products high, for it to even want to scale your brand to the very next level. Now, the main things that influence Google and the main way that Google works is through things such as your product feed quality and your Google Merchant Center quality. These two things directly tell Google how good or bad your brand is. That's why I always say in my videos, that's why this is the first thing we also work on when we start working with a brand under my agency, Your Marketing, which, by the way, if you run a brand doing $50,000 or more per month in revenue and you need some extra help scaling to the next level with Google Ads, go on my website at yourmarketing.com, schedule a completely free call with me, and let's see how we can potentially work together and make that happen. But on a fundamental level, Google requires your brand to have a product feed that is not only the opposite of your competition and different, but also is highly optimized for sales and conversions with things such as high perceived value increasing keywords within the titles, proper SEO techniques, product images which stand out from competition, Google Merchant Center promos and reviews which make your brand also seem like it has higher value than everybody else, so on and so forth. Because what you want want to understand is on Facebook ads, you can basically force your ad in front of people through proper creative strategies, through proper interest targeting. On TikTok ads, it's the same exact thing. On Google, there is no interest targeting. You cannot force your ad in front of people. People have to naturally land on your ad through the research that they do, through the competitors that they look through, your product images, how good they think that your feed is in terms of what they see on the shopping placements or the search listings themselves, or if there's any types of promos or reviews or anything else going on for your brand besides the product. All these things influence Google Ads, and it also influences how Google views your brand directly. Now, there's a few misconceptions when it comes to the Google Ads platform that I want to go over, because it's very important to understand these, as that can help you understand how Google Ads works on a fundamental level. Number one misconception is that most brands think that to scale with Google or to do better on Google Ads itself, you need to have more budget. That's what they mostly think. This is not true, because without proper structure of your campaigns, without a proper foundation, no matter if you're spending $100 a day or $1 million a day, Google is not going to be able to magically increase your quality score or the overall score of your accounts to then win more auctions. Yes, it can help. Yes, it can allow you to force your way into more auctions, and as a result, force your way more into the top 5 listings, but that's not going to lead to profitability. That's not a good, sustainable way to grow your business. So yes, it is about increasing your budgets, but that's not the only things, because on a fundamental level, Google cares about its user experience the most. Second misconception is Google will just naturally figure it out. Most brand owners, what they think is if they just run their campaigns for a certain period of time, if they just kind of do the set and forget method where they start something and just kind of forget about it, hoping it catches back and starts getting momentum, this is the worst way to go about it, because Google on a fundamental level only works if you give it the right signals. You need to have the right product feed. You need to be ensuring your setup in terms of strategy for the campaigns and the product feed, and the back end is ideal and targeted towards the right customer, because relevancy is key when it comes to Google Ads. For instance, if you're selling apples and a bunch of your keywords on your titles and descriptions say oranges, that's already irrelevant, and that's already going to decrease your quality score overall, which is something you want to stay away from. So relevancy is key, because Google is not just magically going to figure it out. You need to guide it towards that path, because again, Google is a search-based platform. And third biggest misconception is a campaign type like Performance Max campaign is basically a plug and play campaign type, where you just plug a bunch of stuff in and you click the play button or the start button, and then it's going to start gaining momentum. It's going to start showing your ads to the right people, and that's how you're going to scale. Well, reality is it's not going to scale. Not only the Performance Max, but for that matter, any campaign type is not going to scale if your feed sucks. So from the get-go, you need to be focusing on optimizing your product feed, ensuring it's set up the right way with the right strategies, because only when your feed is set up properly can your Performance Max campaigns, or any other campaign type for that matter, truly scale to the very next level. Because, and earlier I mentioned that Google Ads, although it's very similar to Amazon in the sense that people have to do a search to find your product, it's not the same exact thing. And the reason is Amazon is a platform on its own that's fully based around shopping. You cannot go on Amazon to find an educational blog post. You cannot go on there to read a news article. You cannot do any of these things, because when you go on Amazon, you are already going on Amazon to look for something specific, ideally to buy something specific. And it doesn't matter if you search up a very broad keyword or a very, very specific one, you're only going to get shopping listings there, which is entirely different from Google Ads, because yes, on Google, you are going to be showing up with the shopping placements at the very top if you do things right. However, you could be shopping on Google. You could be looking through organic search listings. You could be looking at search ads. You could be also looking up those YouTube video placements that come up on the Google searches. There's so many different variations that go around with Google. Also, the fact that on Amazon, your brand doesn't really have to be well known to get sales, whereas on Google, if nobody knows about your brand, then there's a very good chance that nobody's going to buy from your brand, especially if it's more of a health-related product or a product which you consume directly, because in those situations, users want to trust the brand they're shopping with. But ultimately, Google Ads is a platform where all of these things, from the foundation to the product feed to what you do in the merchant center to how you set up your ad strategy, all of these things come together only when they're dialed in can your ROAS continue to scale along with the revenue. Because the moment your brand starts to go off the wrong path with Google Ads, you start targeting irrelevant traffic because your product feed is not relevant or it doesn't have the right keyword, what happens is poor data starts to accumulate within your Performance Max campaigns, your standard shopping, and all the campaign types you're running, and this causes your campaigns to essentially become poisoned. at this point, it becomes a downward spiral where now, even though you're adding more campaign tabs, even though you're increasing your budget, it's in a decline in terms of ROAS, or it's plateauing, simply because your foundations is not in place and your brand is not working with the Google Ads algorithm. It's not satisfying that user first experience. So you have to fix from the ground up with Google Ads. You have to focus on things like LTV, product margins, and the product feed itself, and combine all of these things, because only when they're dialed in can Google Ads itself truly favor your brand and truly start ranking you higher and higher, because ultimately Google cares about its users that use the platform to shop and search for things and do all of these things much more than your brand or the ROAS restrictions you set. But if you run a brand doing $50,000 or more per month in revenue, you need some extra help scaling to the next level with Google Ads. Go onto my website at yourmarketing.com, schedule a completely free call with me, and let's see how we can potentially work together and make that happen.